Everyone thinks they know Little Red Riding Hood, a harmless child, a hungry wolf, a heroic rescue. But here's the truth. In the original versions, she was not saved. She was not protected. She was not warned in time. She was consumed, not just by a monster, but by a world that saw her innocence as weakness. And the wolf. He was never just a wolf. He was a face, a voice, a smile you trusted. A danger that didn't look like danger at all. So ask yourself this. Why would generations of adults preserve a story where a child doesn't survive? Why tell a tale where the girl loses? Unless it was never meant to comfort. It was meant to prepare. Most people only know the polished version, the girl in red, the sick grandmother, the wolf with sharp teeth, the brave woodsman, a story wrapped in safety. But safe stories are rarely honest ones, because originally there was no woodsman, no hero, no rescue at all. Only silence, only the forest, only consequence. The earliest versions weren't fairy tales. They were survival stories disguised as bedtime whispers. They weren't written for entertainment. They were told for protection, passed from mother to daughter, from sister to sister, from one frightened generation to the next. Not to scare children, but to wake them up before the world did. Because the truth is, this story was never about obedience. It was about awareness, not about following rules, but recognizing danger before it smiles. Long before children's books, long before illustrations and cartoons, Little Red Riding Hood lived in the forests of medieval Europe, a world where the woods weren't magical. They were lethal. Villages sat like fragile islands, surrounded by endless dark trees, mist, and silence. Wolves weren't metaphors. They were real. Starving, desperate, but even more dangerous than wolves were men who learned how to behave like them. In these early oral traditions, the girl did not wear red for beauty. She wore it as a symbol. Red meant blood. Not just violence, but transformation. The blood that marks the crossing from childhood into something far more vulnerable. In many rural cultures, red was worn during coming-of-age rituals, fertility rites, protective ceremonies. It meant change. It meant danger. It meant you were now visible to the world, and visibility has always been dangerous for young girls. In the oldest French versions, known today as the Story of Grandmother, the girl's encounter with the wolf is worse than most people imagine. He does not simply attack her. He tricks her. He kills the grandmother. He cooks her flesh. He pours her blood into a bottle. And when the girl arrives, he offers her food. She eats bread made from her grandmother, wine mixed with her grandmother's blood. And as she swallows, an animal in the room whispers the truth, not a metaphor, not poetry. A warning too late. She's been made to consume her own past, her own safety, her own protection, not just a body, but a lineage. This was not told for shock. It was told because the world was like this, a world where predators didn't roar. They invited you to dinner, and the forest was not just trees, it was a threshold, a place where childhood ended, where illusions died, where voices changed, a place where you learned that innocence was not a shield, it was a target. As the tale moved through centuries and from village fires to royal halls, it began to change. Not because truth fades, because truth makes people uncomfortable. The earliest versions were too raw, too honest, too close to reality. A young girl tricking a predator, a child outsmarting death, a girl surviving without permission. Dangerous ideas, especially for a world built on control. So the story was reshaped. First, the girl's intelligence was softened. Then, her power was reduced. Then, her escape was taken away entirely. The wolf slowly transformed, from a symbol of real human danger into a simple animal. Teeth, fur, growls, easier to blame, easier to distance. Because a monster in the woods is less disturbing than a predator in your village. Charles Perrault understood this very well. In 1697, inside the refined circles of French society, he rewrote the story for the court. But he didn't just tell it. He edited it. He stripped away the girl's victory. He erased her cunning. He removed her escape. In his version, she is eaten. No rescue, no cleverness, no survival, only punishment. Because now, the story had a new role. It was no longer meant to teach survival. It was meant to teach obedience. Obedience to rules, to propriety, to social order. A warning to young women about speaking too freely, walking too far, thinking too independently. The forest wasn't just dangerous anymore. Disobedience was. And the story continued changing as it entered more polished hands. The brothers Grimm added the woodsman, the savior, the authority figure, a man with a blade to restore order, not to show that danger exists, but that safety only comes through obedience and protection. The original message of survival was transformed into submission, and that was not an accident. It was design. And here is the truth hidden beneath it all. Little Red Riding Hood was never about wolves, and it was never about children. It was about a moment. The moment a young girl realizes the world is no longer safe. The moment when soft voices become suspicious. When smiles hide hunger. When kindness becomes strategy. The Red Hood was not decoration. It was a signal, a marker of transition, the point where innocence becomes visible, desirable, vulnerable. And the wolf, he is not a creature of myth. He is a pattern that repeats in every era. The charming stranger, the flattering voice, the presence that listens just enough to learn your weaknesses. He does not chase, he invites, he does not attack, he persuades. Because predators don't want resistance, they want permission. And the most disturbing truth of all. The story was rewritten, not to make the girl safer, but to make her more afraid of her own independence than of the wolf. To teach her that curiosity leads to death, that trusting herself leads to danger, that stepping off the path leads to punishment, not because it was true, but because it made her easier to control. This pattern is older than Europe. It appears again and again across cultures, across centuries. In Greek myth, Persephone walks into a field of flowers and disappears into the underworld. A story not about a god, but about a girl crossing a line no one prepared her for. In Slavic folklore, Baba Yaga does not simply eat children, she tests them. She devours those without awareness and forces the alert ones to think, to adapt, and to survive. In Asian folklore, spirits disguise themselves as family, as safety, as warmth, to see if the child recognizes what no longer feels right. Different cultures, different masks, but the same lesson. Danger does not arrive how you expect. It arrives how you trust. And that is what Little Red Riding Hood was truly teaching. Not fear, but recognition. This story was never meant to make you afraid of forests. It was meant to teach you how to walk through a world where danger does not look like danger, where manipulation speaks politely, where harm dresses beautifully, where wolves wear human faces. The real warning wasn't don't talk to strangers. It was learn to notice when kindness feels wrong. Learn to trust the quiet feeling that something isn't right. Learn that innocence is not protection. Awareness is. Because the truth is simple. Little Red Riding Hood wasn't a victim story. It was a survival manual disguised as a fable. And over time, people didn't like what that meant, so they tried to erase it. But stories like this don't disappear. They sleep, they wait, and they return when we need them most.